Hello, friends. This is Confessions with Amy. Here we share new confessions every day.
They say betrayal cuts deepest when it comes from your own family. But no one warns you what it does to your mind. How it makes you question the difference between love and convenience, between care and calculation. My name is Ivy Monroe, and I was married for 6 years to a man I thought would protect me from the world. Instead, he handed me a cup of coffee and a death sentence. It started on a Sunday morning. Quiet. Too quiet, in hindsight. We were in the kitchen of our townhouse in Asheville, North Carolina, the kind of place with reclaimed wood shelves, matcha lattes, and a view of the Blue Ridge Mountains. I used to think it was charming. My husband, Caleb, had always been the thoughtful type, lighting candles when I had cramps, showing up with almond croissants from the French place down the street. The kind of gestures that seem sweet, until you realize they've been carefully designed to keep you just distracted enough. That morning, he made coffee. That wasn't unusual. What was unusual was how he made it. He called out from the kitchen with this overly casual voice. "I made your favorite, Costa Rican, with a dash of cinnamon." I glanced across the table at Sabine, his older sister. She was already seated, with her perfect posture and that sour smile she always wore when I entered a room. I never knew why she disliked me. Maybe because I wasn't like the wives in her world. I didn't come from old money. I didn't play tennis. I didn't pretend to like her. "Thanks, babe," I said, trying to keep the awkwardness from settling like fog between us. I took the cup. It smelled wrong. Not bad, not spoiled, just wrong. Faintly metallic, almost like bleach on warm porcelain. My stomach turned. I glanced at Sabine. She was watching me. Too closely. That's when I did it. I smiled sweetly, laughed like I was teasing, and reached across the table. "Oops. I think Caleb gave me yours." I swapped our mugs. She barely blinked. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. And then Sabine's hand trembled as she lifted her cup again. Her face turned the color of ash, and she clutched her stomach like something inside her had clawed loose. She collapsed. Caleb's reaction wasn't panic. It wasn't fear. It was delay. Like someone flipping through a manual. What do husbands do when someone unexpectedly starts dying in the breakfast nook? I didn't move. I couldn't. My hands were frozen around the warm mug I never drank from. As the paramedics wheeled Sabine out of the house, I heard her whisper something to Caleb. Something wet and low and desperate. I leaned in, just close enough to hear. She was supposed to die. Not me. And that's when I knew. My husband had tried to kill me. And his sister had helped him. But the worst part? I still wanted to believe there had been a mistake. There's something about hospital lighting that drains the life out of everything. Faces, hope, even truth. I sat in the waiting area of Mission Hospital, surrounded by the smell of antiseptic and burnt vending machine coffee, while Sabine fought for her life. I should have felt relief. Maybe even justice. Instead, I felt hollow. Not because I pitied her. Not exactly. But because in some twisted way, she had been willing to die with him. For him. To protect a secret. And that secret was clearly meant to end me. I didn't go home that night. I booked a room at a boutique hotel downtown. The Bishop and Elm, an old mansion turned in with ivy-covered walls and doors that locked from the inside. I didn't tell Caleb. I just vanished, like steam from a kettle. My phone buzzed constantly. 22 missed calls. 11 texts. "Where are you?" "Babe, I'm freaking out. Let's talk. Please." I didn't respond. I stared at his words like they were written in a foreign language. Because nothing he said now could ever erase the fact that he handed me that cup. Smiling. The next morning, I went back to the house. Caleb wasn't home. The place was still. Too still. The kitchen looked normal, like nothing had happened. Sabine's seat still had the throw pillow she always insisted on using. The coffee mugs were gone. But there was a letter on the counter. No envelope. Just a printed sheet, slightly crumpled, like it had been torn from a folder in a hurry. It was addressed to Caleb. From an insurance firm. I read it once. Then again. And then I sat down. The letter was a confirmation of a life insurance policy. Taken out 6 months ago. On me. For $1.2 million. And here's the part that made my lungs stop working. Primary beneficiary, Caleb Monroe. Secondary, Sabine Monroe. I hadn't signed anything. I never even knew. But at the bottom, there was a signature. My name in looping cursive. Forged. That was when the grief turned into something colder. Something sharper. Rage. You see, it's one thing to be betrayed. But to be calculated against, to be itemized, signed off, and insured like a car about to be totaled, that's a different kind of violation. I walked through the house in silence, looking for more. In the drawer by his desk, I found a USB stick labeled with masking tape. W's Docs 23. Inside were scans, ID cards, contracts, some photos of me, candid ones, taken from odd angles. One of me sleeping, one of me coming out of the shower. I wanted to scream. Instead, I copied everything to my laptop and slipped the drive back into place. Caleb came home that night. He kissed me on the forehead like nothing happened. Told me he was worried sick. That he'd just been in shock. That maybe Sabine had gotten into something on her own. She'd always been impulsive, he said. He poured 2 glasses of red wine and talked about starting fresh. I smiled. And I drank water. I watched him sip his wine and talk about going away together. Maybe Vermont or Oregon. I watched his eyes flicker when I didn't answer. I watched him squirm beneath my silence. That night, as he slept beside me, the same man who tried to make me vanish, I realized something. He didn't know I knew. And that gave me time. I wasn't going to run. I wasn't going to confront him. Not yet. I was going to learn everything. Because when you're hunted by someone who knows how to fake love, your survival depends on faking it better. 3 days passed before Sabine opened her eyes. I know, because I was at the hospital every single day. Not in the waiting room this time, but behind the scenes. I'd slipped one of the nurses a $100 bill and told her I needed to know when room 417 showed any sign of consciousness. Family emergency, I said. Long story. She nodded. Aren't they always? When the call came, I was sitting in a cafe downtown, stirring tea I had no intention of drinking. My hands shook as I got in the car. My mind didn't. I knew exactly what I needed to do. Sabine looked terrible, pale, dry-lipped, half-shadow. But she was alive. And when she saw me walk into her room, her eyes widened like she was seeing a ghost. Surprised? I asked, closing the door behind me. She didn't speak. She couldn't, probably. The nurse said her vocal cords were inflamed from the vomiting and seizures. But her eyes said enough. Fear, regret, calculation. I sat down beside her. Slowly. Carefully. Like I was in a room with a caged animal that had once tried to bite. I'm not here to scream, I said. Or throw anything. You can't really process attempted murder and betrayal in the same breath. But I am here to ask one question. She blinked. Why? Sabine closed her eyes for a long time. I thought she might pretend to fall asleep. Instead, she moved her hand slowly across the bed, reaching toward the bedside table where a pen and clipboard sat. Her handwriting was shaky, barely legible, but she wrote 2 words. It was Caleb. I narrowed my eyes. I know that. I want to know why you helped him. She wrote slower now. 3 words. I owed him. What followed came in broken whispers. Hoarse. Deliberate. Every word scraped from somewhere deep. When they were younger, Caleb had taken the fall for her in a corporate fraud scheme. She had siphoned money from a real estate trust, a family connection, and when it came to light, he covered it up. Took the hit. Quietly. Expensive lawyers. Non-disclosure settlements. Their parents never even knew. She owed him her entire life, her freedom, her inheritance, her spotless reputation. And when he came to her with the plan, she agreed without asking too many questions. He told her I was cheating. That I was planning to leave him and take everything. That I was violent. Manipulative. Dangerous. He made me believe you weren't real, she whispered. I laughed. Cold and short. So the solution was poison? She swallowed hard. I didn't know it was that. I swear. He said it was just something to sedate you. Make you collapse. So you'd be diagnosed with something, hospitalized. Out of the picture. Conservatorship, maybe. I thought he just wanted to control the narrative. Why would you believe that? I snapped. Sabine looked at me then. For real. Eyes clear. No gloss. Because that's how our family works. She told me about their father. A man with tailored suits, manicured fingers, and the emotional depth of a paperclip. Power, control, optics, that's what mattered. Mistakes weren't fixed. They were buried. And Caleb had learned early that you don't solve problems. You eliminate them. By the end of her whisper confession, I felt sick. Not because I pitied her, I didn't. But because I finally understood, Caleb wasn't impulsive. He was groomed for this. And Sabine? She was just another piece on his chessboard. Only now she'd been sacrificed too. I stood to leave. She reached out and grabbed my wrist, a surprising amount of strength in her fingers. Ivy, she rasped. Be careful. I pulled away slowly. Oh, Sabine, I said. I'm not the one who needs to be. The morning after I visited Sabine, I woke up before sunrise. Not out of fear, that was gone. Something colder had taken its place. A new instinct. Not survival. Strategy. I knew Caleb. Knew the way he operated. He didn't improvise. He orchestrated. Everything from the restaurants he picked to the exact timing of when he'd text me back. Even his charm was choreographed. And that meant he wouldn't stop just because Plan A failed. If anything, he was probably already drafting Plan B. The only way to win with someone like him is to let them believe they're still in control, right until the moment they choke on it. So I smiled at breakfast. I let him pour my coffee. I even wore the blue wrap dress he always liked. I listened while he talked about work, the hospital, how sorry he was about everything. I've been thinking we should get out of town, he said, buttering his toast like we were still a married couple, not co-stars in a failed murder plot. Maybe do that trip to Colorado we talked about. Reset. I looked up from my eggs. Tilted my head slightly. You'd still want that with me? He laughed. Of course. I mean, what happened to Sabine was horrible, but we need to live, not hide. I nodded. What I didn't say was that I had already opened a new checking account in my maiden name. That I had already transferred $6,800 in cash from our joint account, just below the threshold that would trigger an alert. That I had rented a secure storage unit and started moving my valuables, one by one. I didn't say I'd met with a friend from college who now worked in private investigations. Her name was Raina Cross, and she owed me a favor. I gave her the USB, the forged signature, the insurance letter. She didn't ask why. She just said, got it. I'll make copies. When this drops, you'll want to be long gone. By the end of the week, I had 2 backup phones, a new lawyer, and a burner Gmail under the name Rowan Bale, just in case. But I wasn't done. I needed Caleb to feel untouchable, relaxed, like the storm had passed. So when he suggested dinner at Alidy's, our favorite French place, the site of our engagement, no less, I said yes. I wore the silver earrings he bought me in Charleston. The red lipstick he always said made me look dangerous in a good way. Halfway through dinner, I excused myself and stepped outside to take a call. Instead, I texted Raina. Now. Inside my clutch was a small recording device, voice-activated, thin as a credit card. It had been under Caleb's seat all week. And earlier that afternoon, Raina had called me with exactly what I hoped to hear. He's talking to a lawyer, asking about filing for mental instability, conservatorship over you. With enough evidence from friends and doctors, it's plausible. So he's still planning to control me? He's planning to own you, Ivy. The recording included damning lines like, she's erratic. I think she's a danger to herself, and I don't want a divorce. I want access. I sent the files to 3 places, my lawyer, Raina, and a secure cloud account linked to a timed release email that would forward to my parents and several former colleagues if I didn't log in every 48 hours. Just in case he got desperate. That night, after dinner, he kissed me under the string lights outside the restaurant. He told me he loved me, that we could still have a future, and I kissed him back. Because revenge isn't always fire. Sometimes it's ice, and it takes time to freeze someone solid. I wasn't just escaping. I was going to ruin him. The day I left Caleb, it rained. Not a cinematic downpour, no thunder, no drama. Just a quiet, steady rain. Soft enough to be forgettable, but insistent enough to soak you if you stood still too long. I didn't pack dramatically. No tear-streaked goodbye, no suitcases slammed shut. I had already moved everything important weeks ago. The rest, the things that used to matter, I left behind. My wedding ring lay on the dresser. Next to it, a folded note that simply read, "You taught me how to disappear. Thank you." He didn't see me leave. He was at the gym. Routine matters to men like him. Predictability gives them the illusion of control. It made slipping away laughably easy. I drove east. No final glance in the rearview. Just the low hum of the road and a playlist I hadn't listened to since before I met him. Back when I was Ivy Monroe, a woman with dreams and sarcasm and messy hair. Not Mrs. Caleb Monroe, the polished accessory to a sociopath. At a diner 3 hours outside of Asheville, I watched the news unfold from my phone. Caleb Monroe, local entrepreneur, under investigation for insurance fraud, forged medical documents, and attempted domestic poisoning. The evidence Raina gathered had reached the right inboxes. The audio, the falsified insurance policy, and the cherry on top, a quiet anonymous tip to his employer about how he misappropriated company funds to pay for psychiatric evaluations of his wife without her consent. It would unravel him slowly, publicly, elegantly. I didn't need to watch it in real time. I just needed to know it had begun. Later that week, Sabine's lawyer called. She was pleading guilty, cooperating in exchange for leniency. She'd signed a statement admitting her part, handing over emails, text messages, phone call logs. She wasn't protecting Caleb anymore. Because in the end, he had never protected her. They always turn on each other when the light gets hot enough. And I was the one who struck the match. Now, I live in Astoria, in a loft above a bookstore and a Turkish cafe that always smells like cardamom. I go for long walks. I read crime novels and don't flinch. I learned how to sleep without checking the door lock 4 times. People say I seem peaceful, grounded, even graceful. But I carry a truth with me now, a brutal, beautiful clarity. Some monsters wear wedding rings. Some women wear survival like silk. And when I stir my morning coffee, always my own, always safe, I smile. Because the cup meant to end me was just the beginning.